Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the sixth and final webinar in our webinar reentry series. Tonight, we're excited to share information regarding athletics and performing arts. Before we get started, just a few reminders. Those of you that are looking to submit questions for our panelists to respond to this evening, if you could please submit those questions through the Q&A portion of the Zoom platform that's located at the bottom of the screen. If you are utilizing the chat function, we don't always see that. We're really focusing in on the Q&A section, so please submit in that portion of this platform. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted within 24 hours on our district website. We hope to have this broadcast placed on the website by tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock. If you are viewing on Facebook Live, please understand that you won't be able to participate in the polls that we have placed throughout this webinar, but we will have the polls displayed so that you can follow along with us as we work through this presentation. As a reminder, this is a public forum and we ask that you be respectful and remain respectful in your communications this evening. And with that, let's get started. So we're very excited this evening to welcome our group of panelists. First start by introducing Mr. Chris Campolida. He's our Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Health. We have Cindy Cronin, Principal at McNamara Elementary School. She's representing our elementary instructional staff and administrators. We have Jen Turpening, an Assistant Principal at Baker High School, who's representing our secondary instructional staff and administration. We have Renee Burnett, our Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction, and Tony Cardamon, our Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction. Both Tony and Renee serve as the facilitators of our Fine Arts department here within the district. So again, welcome to our panelists. We're very excited for what is hoped to be a great evening full of questions and answers. Before we get into the presentation, I just want to highlight again what our expectations are for this district with regard to face coverings. So we are expecting face coverings to be worn at all times for students and staff while they're in the building. We certainly recognize that there will be breaks needed to be built in throughout the day so that will help ease that frustration of students and staff throughout the school day. Again, we are expecting this to happen. We certainly recognize that there will be students and or staff that may not be able to have face coverings on due to physical or medical conditions. And that certainly highlights the fact that we need others to make sure that they're wearing those face coverings throughout the school day. We're going to start real quickly with a poll, and it doesn't relate to athletics or performing arts, but it's important for us to know. So I'm going to start this poll for those of you on the Zoom call. And we're interested in knowing if you have, at this point in time, gone into the School Tool Parent Portal and selected your return to school option for your students. If you haven't, you have until the end of the day tomorrow. We certainly would hope that you could do that as quickly as possible. I know most are waiting to see what the governor announces with regard to the return of students in school this September, but we certainly need that information because it's driving a lot of the decisions that are being made, as well as the options to try to get more students in on a regular, more consistent basis. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll for the 107 folks that are currently on this call, and we'll share out for those on Facebook Live. So it looks like 84% of those of you on this call have completed the return to school option within the portal. We appreciate that. The 16% that haven't, please make sure you do that by the end of the day tomorrow. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing that. Thank you again. And we will move forward with the highlights of this presentation. So I'm gonna start by having our Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction, Renee Burnett, go through our discussion points for this evening.
Welcome everybody and thank you for being here this evening with us to talk about our fine arts program and our PE and health programs as well. So just to give you an idea of how the webinar will flow tonight, we're going to start talking about our fine arts program that will include our general music and ensembles, our marching band, our fine arts, and we'll finish up talking about our athletics and PE programs for the remainder of the evening.
So let's get started. And for that, let's talk a little bit about the grounding principles. And for that, we're going to turn to Tony Cardamon, our Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction.
Hello. Again, thank you all for joining tonight. So when we talk about these areas as a district, we're really very proud of our students and our staff and the accomplishments they made with athletics and as artists and musicians. And we also recognize these are the students who had a particularly challenging time through March and June, not being able to participate fully in these programs that they so desperately love and excel at. But as we prepare for the fall, we have met with the various departments of teachers involved in all of these to discuss some of the challenges we face. And we talked about these grounding principles, one being student engagement, like how the focus being of how can we actively engage students in these programs and curriculum areas, whether in person or remotely. How can we optimize that? We also talked about that we do value these programs, that it's not extras, okay? And sometimes we've heard that as, well, these are just extras, and they're not. The district does not see these as extras. We hold these experiences as a critical piece of a well-rounded school experience. But lastly comes to health and safety, and that's the most important thing in the day and age we're living in. And we had to balance all of the things we want to do for kids with all of it we're able to do health and safety-wise, looking at the regulations from New York State Ed and from the Department of Health. So I'm maintaining a 6-foot distance is acceptable in classrooms. The Department of Health regulations for any activities that result in aerobic activities such as PE, heavy breathing, or activities that require projecting the voice, such as in singing or chorus, or playing a wind instrument and band, requires a 12-foot distance to be maintained in all directions. So that is an extra added challenge given the space limitations in our schools. Then in addition to that, the guidance for not sharing common supplies, which is a very common practice in art classes and in music classes, just added another layer that was challenging. So we looked at all of those grounding principles. We met with staff and tried to develop the best that we thought we could for students at this time. And that's what we're going to share with you now.
Thank you. So Tony, let's talk a little bit about those elementary specials and what they will look like for our students.
Yes. So at our K-5 level, and I'm going to talk about K-5, those students who are parents who are choosing the hybrid model, the 3 days in, the 3 days of remote learning, during the 3 days of in-person learning when they're in school, students are going to receive instruction daily on a rotating basis for art, music, PE, and library. But the key is we are trying to minimize the movement of students in our buildings. In elementary, we're going to maintain those students in their classroom for as much of the day as we can. So the special area teachers will be coming to each classroom for instruction. So this is requiring our teachers to be extremely creative, and they're in the process now meeting to look at their curriculum and make the adjustments they need to of how to deliver these they travel between classrooms. The PE staff will design lessons around mindfulness and health, those kind of activities, but on the days that good weather allows and they're able to manage the group of students to maintain that social distance, take them outside for some activities that maintain that 12 feet. For music, in lieu of singing, the teachers, when they were meeting, were talking about things such as, having students hum instead of sing, using items such as pencils to tap out rhythms, and also looking at, are there instruments that they could sanitize between use to have students use. Our art teachers also are looking at their units and saying, and trying to determine with the guidelines, do they take some of the normally shared art supplies, create separate bags of supplies for students that students would maintain for themselves to use in the classroom. So those hybrid students are going to get their specials in a 3-day rotation. The principals will share those out after the year starts, and they won't have specials during the remote portion. So the 3 days that they're home, specials won't happen for those students. But the students who are 100% remote, they will also have time to engage with specials instruction, and that will be determined on whatever that schedule looks like. As Mr. DeBarber already said, we need parents register and choose hybrid or choose 100% remote. We're able to then make a better determination what that fully remote learning looks like. Given the unique challenges around instrumentals, we're going to postpone ensembles until later in the year. Our hope is to get the year started and then work with chorus, band, orchestra departments to determine if it's possible to offer these in person or to do them remotely. But we need to get the building the year started and then revisit that probably around October at the elementary level. What they will do is they're going to offer lessons for orchestra and band students remotely, regardless of the option parents choose for their child. Because of the restrictions right now of doing these things in person in such a small space that we have. So for those hybrid students, these will happen on their 3 days of remote learning. And around October, at some point, mid-October to the end of October, again, those band and orchestra teachers will be in touch with families about those lessons. Finally, given the unique challenges around instruments, we are going to pause at the elementary level on recruiting new students. And this was a really hard decision, and as we met with the music teachers, they shared for a brand new string or instrument student to start at such a young age remotely without any in-person support is difficult. So the families who last year before their students left opted for them to start a new instrument at elementary. The band or orchestra teachers will be in touch. We're going to put that on pause, see what it looks like again at mid-October, beginning November time, and see if we can at least start some in-person lessons for those students. But again, at this time, those will be on pause.
So Tony, just to clarify, I want to make sure for those on the call that they're walking away with the same understanding. Specials will be in the classroom. What art, music, PE, physical education. Ensembles, they will not start at the elementary level. That will be revisited at a later point unless the guidelines change with regard to the health and safety of our students. Those students that are receiving specials and they're on the hybrid model, they will get those specials when they're in school in person.
Correct.
Okay, and then on the days that they're out, that on full remote instruction, they will just be working with the other content area teacher.
Correct. The hybrid students, when they're home on those 3 days of remote instruction, they'll be working engaged more in the with their classroom teacher content.
Okay, and then the last piece there with the lessons. So students will be getting lessons virtually from music teachers at the K-5 level. New students to music, specifically lessons, that will be revisited possibly at the beginning of October, once students have been able to get into a routine within the classroom. Is that correct?
Correct. At this point, we need to get the building open, see what those spaces that are available look like, measure for those wind instruments, the 12-foot distance, and even with string instruments, maintaining a 6-foot distance, but with their bows and all of that, finding those locations. So it's not that those lessons won't come back in person, but right now they'll begin remotely.
Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing one question on the chat here with regard to choral lessons at the elementary level. I know that the choral teacher is the one that typically is also providing general music. So will there be opportunities, or will that have to be looked at more closely for any lessons for those students in lieu of the ensemble?
Correct. So for the choral teachers, they do, traditionally elementary, we don't do choral lessons, just the ensembles. So what they thought would be best, again, is wait to see what school looks like in each of the elementary rooms. Then I'm going to hold a meeting with each of those little departments separately, the chorus teachers or general music teachers, the string teachers, the band teachers, and see what they feel is safe and what spaces, along with the principals, are allowed to do that, or do we just pursue it remotely?
Okay, thank you. So let's transition to Cindy Cronin for the elementary perspective. So Cindy, if you could talk to us a little bit more about specials.
Sure, thanks, Joe. First, let me say that although I'm principal at Van Buren Elementary, that the 5 elementary principals, we've been meeting regularly as a team over the past weeks to plan for the return to school. And we're all looking forward to the reopening so that we can reconnect with students and families. We know our students have missed school, and the school is an important place for their social and emotional health. And the topics this evening are some of those things that we've discussed in our meetings. So we know that athletics and fine arts provide many benefits to the elementary age child by promoting self-expression and creativity, as well as developing problem solving and fine and gross motor skills. In addition, at the elementary level, we want to make sure that we're maximizing a student's in-person instructional experience in the hybrid model. And we would really like students to experience a daily routine that resembles, as much as possible, their pre-COVID school experience. So, as explained previously in the hybrid model, students will continue to receive special area instruction each day like they have in the past, with music, art, PE, and library rotation, and will accommodate and make those modifications so that we're complying with all safety guidelines. So in addition to specials, there will be another adjustment to the classroom routine. Wellness time, which is typically a 30-minute block of time. Wellness, which is also known as recess, will be distributed throughout the school day to allow for mask and activity breaks. The weather permitting, these breaks will be taken outside. So fingers crossed for central New York weather. At this time, students, though, will not have access to playground equipment during wellness, but they will be able to use the fields and the walking paths. So as discussed as well, band, orchestra, and chorus participation begins at the elementary level. And so Tony explained that those things are on hold right now, and that we will continue to explore options so that we can bring that level of instruction to students in those areas.
Thank you very much. One quick question, library. So how will that work within specials, or how will students have access to the library media specialist within that elementary schedule, if there's an answer to that at this point in time?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, we had a meeting with all the library media specialists at the elementary level yesterday, and we were talking about how important it is for us to get books into the hands of children. So we do have a pretty robust digital library, so the loaning of those books should be pretty easy. But we know that kids like that tactile experience of having a book in their hands with pages to turn. So our librarians are exploring bringing, when they push in, bringing age-appropriate, grade-appropriate books to each classroom so that they can distribute those to children and they can sign them out like they normally would. And then the return process, of course, is a little bit different. They'll bring them back. The books have to be quarantined for a certain amount of time before they can be redistributed. But it is a priority to be able to get those books into the hands of students.
So I do see one more question that relates to elementary before we transition to secondary. So either Tony or Cindy, if you wouldn't mind. So we talked a lot about how that will look with the hybrid. Those families that are choosing to go full remote, does anybody want to talk a little bit about the special areas within the scope of full remote instruction, 100% for families?
So for the full remote, when I've met with those teachers, again, part of this is all dependent on the number of families that register students for hybrid versus the number of families who register for 100% remote. That's why it's really important for people to register soon. But the plan is to still offer specials with the fully remote students, but exactly what they will look like, we have to wait till all the registration is done. we are committed in offering an experience for those students too.
Thank you, Tony. So let's now transition to secondary. And for that, we'll bring back Renee Burnett, our Director of Secondary Curriculum Instruction. And again, she serves as the one of the fine arts coordinators for the district.
Thanks, Joe. So the fine arts at the secondary program are a little bit different than what's happening at the elementary level. You know, typically we take top honors in all of our music festivals. Our art students do the same in the Scholastic art competition. And unfortunately this year, we are just got word that our the all-county and all-state festivals are being canceled for this school year. We're waiting for the official announcement, but we were notified that on August 4th, the all-county were canceled, which is in line with the all-state competitions. So there's a recognition across the state that music and potentially some of our art are just not going to be able to happen in the way that we traditionally experience these programs. And that's so disappointing on everybody's part. We know this is not what we want for our students. This is not what our teachers want. Certainly this is not what we want for our students as district representatives. So we're going to try to make the best of the situation that we can. So, you know, our 6 through 12 music and PE courses, and Chris will talk a little bit more about PE, but those will be online. And our teachers, when we talked to our music teachers last week, they obviously are, you know, not excited about doing things online, but they are excited about the potential of things that they can do with students with smaller groups. And, you know, some of the things, positive things that came out of the spring was that many of our teachers said that the touch time that they had with students in smaller groups was really beneficial, and that they had a chance to get to know students in ways that they maybe hadn't before. So there are some positive things that are coming out of this, although it may not seem on the surface, because we're used to our very large concerts. We're used to, you know, all of the things that our students typically do with our musicals. And all of those musicals, K through 12, are also going to be canceled at this point. And hopefully, if things change, we will absolutely revisit those conversations with our teachers. So I would say that from our perspective at the secondary level, our teachers are committed more than ever. They want our programming to be just as amazing this year, whether it's in person or online, as it is in any other year. And I know that they're committed to giving our students the best experience that they possibly can under the current conditions. So I know Jen Turpening is going to talk a little bit more about the secondary, some of the programming at the secondary level as well.
Okay, before we transition, thank you for that, Renee. Jen, you're up next, but I just wanted to make a comment. So I'm seeing some chatter with regard to NYSSMA. You know, why can't NYSSMA be done virtually? That's a decision that that organization will certainly make as the school year proceeds. And so we'll await further guidance from them. I also see a comment regarding NYSSBA sending a letter to the Board of Regents and the governor's office regarding studies showing that, you know, 6 feet is fine for music students, why 12 feet? Well, I just wanted to point out the district has no control over that. We are following New York State Education Department guidance. So unless that changes, unfortunately, we're stuck within the parameters that have been set forth before us. Again, this is about safety for all students and staff. And so we're certainly going to do whatever we're being asked to do to support students in the safest way possible. So, you know, if the Board of Regents, the New York State Governor's Office, or the New York State Education Department have changes in guidance, we will certainly review that and make changes ourselves if need be. So on that comment, let's transition to the secondary perspective. And for that, we have Jen Turpening, who's here to share how things will look at the secondary level.
Thank you, Joe. As Renee mentioned, we have amazing arts programs at all levels, but every year at the secondary level, we are given honors and accolades. And just last year, we were named one of the best communities for education, music education for the 11th year in a row. And every year we have art students who receive gold and silver keys on the national level for scholastic arts. And so the music and art part of our community runs deep and it is embedded, and we are doing everything we can to work to maintain the excellence that our community has and our schools have in music and arts. When it comes to music for secondary ed, it's going to be similar to what Tony had mentioned. The current guidelines indicate that we have to have a distance of 12 feet. Due to space constraints at the high school and other secondary schools, it means that we cannot have ensembles performing together at this time. One of the things that we are planning for right now is the music teachers are working on virtual learning for music when it comes to lessons, similar to like it was in the spring. And so we will have lessons in music. They will be virtual. We had some great technology come out of the music teachers' passion for wanting to make sure their students could perform together and practice and live streaming. And it wasn't perfect and it wasn't what it was meant to be, but they really did come up with some innovative ways for our students to be together virtually and play their instruments. One of the other things that comes into play at the secondary level is that students in music aren't allowed to share anything under these new guidelines. And so that includes things like sheet music. And so you cannot sit next to your partner and share sheet music and turn the same sheet music page. You also cannot share accessories like mallets or cymbals. And so that becomes very difficult for students that are percussionists when they're in a music class. We know that students are going to take lessons. And so because of that, the district is still going to offer their instrument loan program for students that need instruments for home. And once music classes start in the fall, in September, the music teachers will talk to their class about how to get a musical instrument loaned out to them for the school year. Once restrictions are lifted, the district will revisit in-person lessons and in-person ensembles. The other piece is with art classes and technology classes. So right now, we are hoping to be able to run every single course that is offered in the course catalog. We are changing our schedule to a 6-period schedule. And with that, students are going to make some choices, and hopefully the choices that they've already made are the choices that they are going to keep. And that means that we will be running our art and our technology courses. If students decide to change courses, and one of the questions that a parent had asked is, can my child switch from music to art? Absolutely, they can absolutely switch, and you just need to contact your guidance counselor. But right now, our art and technology classes will be in person, and that's based on our enrollment numbers.
So Jen, just to clarify again with that, so parents have the ability, or students have the ability to switch courses.
Sure.
There is going to be a change. As far as the lessons, choral lessons, orchestra lessons,
Wind,
instrumental, wind, you name it, those will occur virtually for all students at the secondary level.
for all students in all types of music classes, lessons will occur virtually.
So more than likely, those will occur on the remote days for students following that hybrid schedule.
I would suspect so.
Okay, thank you. I'm just seeing some questions regarding that, and I appreciate you responding for that. So are we going to now transition to marching band?
Sure, and that was my slide too.
Yep.
And so it was just, and I'm sure that everybody on the call is, very involved in music. the New York State Field Band Association has canceled marching band and field band, winter drumline, winter guard, and as of right now, pep band. As conditions change, the New York State Field Band Association will revisit those and let us know what our options are. The district is looking for other ways for our students to participate, but we don't have an idea of what that looks like quite yet.
A couple other quick questions that relate to secondary as far as course credit. So students that would have been in an ensemble, they're still going to be scheduled for that ensemble, but it will be virtual and they'll get the lesson. So I'm correct in assuming, based on some questions here, that they will be getting 1 unit of credit just like they would for attending that class in person, correct?
Absolutely, because on a student's schedule, they're scheduled for ensemble. They're never scheduled for lessons on their schedule. So they'll be scheduled for ensemble, and just like in the past, the music teachers will put together a virtual lesson schedule that the students will attend, but students will get 1 credit for their music class.
Okay. And this might be a question more for Renee, but you know, I'm seeing some comments about 8th grade being fairly tight as far as New York State mandates, and with the reduction in the periods, how will they get those mandates? So I was hoping you might be able to just touch on the fact that New York State Ed highlighted that seat time is really no longer necessary, and that the focus really is on the learning standards.
Yeah, so there's some flexibility with that seat time. And, you know, one of the things that I've actually got open in the New York State guidance is that are the instructional experiences, when considered as a whole, comparable in rigor, scope, and magnitude to a traditionally delivered unit of study. And so that gives us some flexibility with that 180-minute, you know, mandate that the state traditionally would have. So they're recognizing the fact that districts need some flexibility in order to get kids through the programming that is required of them. So we're making sure that students get standards-based instruction for all areas, for all curriculum areas. That has never been a question.
Thank you. And one just clarification too, as far as musicals, where do we stand with musicals? I know that's probably very similar to the marching band.
Yeah, so musicals at this point are canceled because under the current conditions, we are unable to bring students together to perform those types of activities. I believe it's at Reynolds that they have a musical, that they do one every year at the elementary, but then traditionally we have the Durkee and the Baker musicals as well. And right now, unless things change in the short term, it would, you know, we could potentially, you know, put some things in motion. We may have to move some timing. Traditionally, we do the tryouts for musicals for the high school are in November-ish kind of time, December-y, and we may have to move some of that depending on if things look better. Obviously, we want to do what we can with what the conditions tell us that we can do.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and start a poll, and then while the poll is going, I have one more comment or question that I would like to have answered before we shift to athletics. So let's start our second poll. Whoops, apologize, let me go back. And for those of you on the call, if you could please respond. If we're in a 100% remote environment, we're curious, will you still want your students to participate in music and or the fine arts classes? And while you're doing that, the question that I see appearing, and this might be for Jen and or Renee, when we look at the schedule, if we're down to 6 periods potentially at the high school, the individual's asking, you know, what will they do when they're scheduled for band, chorus, and orchestra? And it's my understanding is that becomes a supplemental period on the student's schedule. So they're doing that only on the remote days. So their schedule during the normal school day when they're in person will be filled with classes that wouldn't be done virtually. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so we're hoping that when they're in school, there'll be two components to a schedule. We're not exactly sure what we can manage in School Tool right now, but that one part would be the periods that they're in school, and then there would be a supplemental part to the schedule that had their virtual learning experiences that they would be having at home. So if a student had chorus, band, orchestra on their schedule, it would not occur while they were in school for those 3 days. I also read one of the questions, and I wanted to clarify for one of the participants, is that art classes will be held in person. So they will not be held virtually. Our goal is to have art and technology classes in person.
Thank you. So let's, you see the results, those of you on the call, those of you on Facebook Live, 81% are still committed to having students participate in music and fine arts if we are 100% remote. So we certainly appreciate that and are thankful for that. And 19% are saying at this point that they would not and they want to make some changes. And we certainly recognize it's a family choice. So thank you for participating in that quick poll. Let's shift gears for a while. We're going to move now to athletics. And for that, we have Chris Campolida, our Director of Athletics, Physical Education, and Health. And he's going to walk us through where we stand currently with athletics, physical education, health, instruction. So Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. And, you know, it is challenging hearing, you know, about the field band and all county with, you know, music and a lot of those things being taken away. And obviously for the sports world, you know, back in the middle of July, the state put it out that they announced the delay for the fall season. And they gave us the time period of September 21st to start, which the original date was August 24th. And, you know, obviously that is frustrating, you know, especially with, you know, the loss of our entire, you know, the tail end of our winter season and our entire spring season. But this is where we are. We're going to try to be as positive as we can with it and plan. You know, the state has given us a roadmap, you know, when we do get the green light. It's information with the CDC, Department of Health, NFHS, to kind of work with us to get a plan together to make sure that when sports do start, these student athletes, our coaches are safe. And that's the biggest thing. We want to make sure that when it does happen, we get to that point. And I think one of the biggest things for that is getting our students back into the classroom safe. And looking forward to seeing how that goes in the beginning of the school year. But we have adjusted our family ID for the dates, and I'll get into that a little after. But as I mentioned earlier about the roadmap, the state has tiered, you know, the sports, high risk sports to moderate risk sports and lower risk sports. And they've given examples of, you know, the protective barriers, the probability of respiratory, you know, the heavy breathing and things like that. And a high risk sport would be wrestling, football, boys lacrosse. Moderate sport would be basketball, volleyball, baseball, softball. And then your lower end, which would be golf, cross country, some of the track and field events. So they have started to look at tiering those sports to make sure that they're safe. And you know, like I said, I hope that, you know, we can get back to athletics as soon as possible. It's just that a lot of things need to take place for that.
Okay.
And as mentioned, the family ID. So we did change the date per the state. As I mentioned, it was August 24th. The delay start is September 21st, and that is for all sports, modified all the way through varsity. The registration for family ID has to be 30 days prior to the start date, which puts it at August 22nd. We do have a deadline to sign up, just like we do for all the seasons, which would be September 14th. All that information is on our district webpage under athletics. So if you need to view that, that information's there. And if you have any questions with it, obviously my office is here to help out with that. The facilities still, and I know this I get a lot of calls on the facilities, and our facilities haven't been released. And, I want to make sure that we're doing the right things, the social distancing, wearing our face masks. The only athletic facility is our tennis courts, and there are strict rules on that based off of state guidelines. And we did put those out at the tennis courts. So as of right now, until further notice, until we get the green light, our athletic facilities are still closed to the public.
Okay, so let's transition now. What does this mean for our student athletes?
All right. So basically, and this is a question that has definitely come up, obviously with the school either going hybrid or 100% remote. The state requirement it's stated right there. Student athletes must be enrolled in 3 full-time courses and actively participate in physical education. So I'm going to have to wait for the state to rule on that. That is definitely a hot topic. I believe across the country, in our state, and in our section when talking to fellow ADs. So we're really going to wait for guidance on that. I don't want to put something out there and then it comes back and there's an issue if a student athlete is 100% remote, being able to participate or not participate into sports. But as it states right there, we definitely have to make sure that we follow this guideline. If there's any change to that, we would get that out. But as I mentioned, it's critical that our athletes have the full 3 courses along with PE as a state requirement.
Okay, thank you. I think that's very helpful for families, specifically those that are considering the option of the 100% remote, not knowing where the New York State Public High School Athletic Association or the New York State Education Department stands on making adjustments to the current policies in place. So thank you for that, Chris.
Yep.
Let's move to another quick poll. So for those of you on this call, if you wouldn't mind letting us know, given what you know at this point, would you want your student to participate in an abbreviated athletic season? 2 choices, yes or no.
And Joe, while they're looking at that, as mentioned with the abbreviated season, the state did put out a survey back in the beginning of July to districts in terms of an abbreviated season, what that would look like, when the start dates would look like. And a lot of that stuff is just, it's really trying to plan and prepare for the scenarios that could happen and try to make sure that we do allow opportunities for our student athletes to participate one way or the other. But without question, the state is looking at these situations. So we'll see how, what that looks like.
So thank you for those folks on the call. Looks like 84% would certainly be open to an abbreviated athletic season. 16% are saying no. And what we mean by that is, as Chris mentioned, would be just a condensing of the seasons in order to fit them into the school year. And again, all of that is dependent on the direction that both Section 3 athletics provides here in our section within New York State, as well as the New York State Public High School Athletic Association as a whole statewide. Okay. Let's transition to physical education. So Chris, I know Tony and I know Cindy talked a little bit about PE, but could you just talk a little bit more about what that would look like at the secondary level and certainly touch on anything that was left off in the K-5 model?
Yeah, and I think Tony did a wonderful job at explaining that. Obviously, we would love to get back to last year, how we started our school year with everything in school. But, as Tony mentioned, with the hybrid model at the elementary level, we're going to have our PE teachers, push in, if the opportunity, weather's permitting, and they can keep that social distancing, hopefully can try to get them outside for some of that. At the secondary level, we've got phenomenal PE teachers, and obviously this is a massive change And last year, when this all went down in March, we were lucky to have a couple days prior to school getting shut down where they're able to brainstorm ideas virtually, creating logs, having communication with the students and reaching out. And that is the model that we're going to be doing at the secondary level. The state has been great with providing us a lot of resources through PE for the online instruction through SHAPE. PBS was also one that they had. New York State PE department along with health has come up with a lot. However, with the guidelines of the 12 feet apart in space, it's going to be very difficult for us to manage that. But I do have great faith in our teachers, our PE teachers, our health teachers at the secondary level to make sure that they're going to take pride in their discipline, and they're going to make sure that our student athletes have some type of physical education so that they can continue the wellness and staying in shape.
Talk a little bit about students who receive APE services.
Yep, so the APE services will still be given. And if the student is in school for that, obviously we'll have our PE teachers. Any PE teacher is allowed to, they have their certification in APE. So if we have to spread them out through Ray, Durkee, Baker, possibly maybe at the elementary level to help out, we'll make sure that we do that so that those students have the services that they need.
So it's quite possible APE services could or will be done in person, given the staff that we have.
That is correct.
Okay. And one more question regarding physical education. Parents asking, what about year-round? Her child participates on year-round baseball teams. And she's wondering if students can get PE credit for participating in those year-round teams.
Yes, and that is not, as of now, we can't accommodate that with the state. We have to have the PE, the students taking that during the district. We're not allowed to do that with any sport for that matter.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
I think that helps those on the call. We will transition now to health. So talk to us about what health will look like in our secondary schools.
Yep. So health, it's a little different, but not too much. At the 7th grade, hybrid is going to be conducted in person or remote, and that would be obviously at Ray Middle School. And really piggybacking off what we spoke about at the secondary level, grades 9 through 12 will be conducted 100% online for the hybrid model, and then grades 7 through 12 remote would for the remote construction would be 100% online. Same deal with PE. Our health teachers did a wonderful job touching base with their students in March and continued for the spring. The nice thing is we're gonna have a couple days in August to look at that, to do some development and creating some of those lessons to help out. And I trust that our teachers will do a wonderful job with that.
So we have time now for quite a few questions, and I'm seeing a whole host coming through. Real quickly, can you talk a little bit about, Chris or Renee, what that online learning piece or that remote learning piece for phys ed would look like at the junior high school level?
Yes. So at the junior high school level, it'd be very similar to how we did our PE classes last spring, March through over to June. And obviously they would have the teachers would set up the classroom through PE and communicate back and forth with the student athletes. Again, whether it's, last year we used the Google Classroom, there were logs for that so that there was communication back and forth. I will say that now that we've got somewhat, a semester or part of the 3rd and 4th quarter through, we are going to have making sure that the students are doing this work and making sure that they, understand that they've got to make sure that they follow through with the classwork for all those levels. But that's, they're going to have a PE teacher. They're going to be communicating with the PE teacher. you know, whether it's virtual lessons or those physical logs that they created. I don't know, Renee.
So it's possible, Chris, there could be some videos, whether they be YouTube, where a teacher is providing some workouts, some example, you know, using household items to do some conditioning and I guess training just to stay physically fit, stretching, yoga.
Correct. So they've got the state obviously understanding the situation that they're in gave us a ton of resources for that from the elementary level all the way up. And as mentioned, we are going to meet with, you know, the P staff for some PD development this month so we can help create those.
Okay. I see a few questions actually related to FACS, Family and Consumer Science. I know it doesn't relate, but somebody's asking that. Family and Consumer Science and Technology. Sometimes they refer to those as one might consider a special area as well. So this maybe is for Renee and or Jen. What does that look like at Ray, Durkee, or Baker as far as instruction for those courses? I know, Jen, you talked a little bit about, you know, the art classes and technology being in person, but I think some of our viewers may have missed that. So if you guys could talk a little bit more about that, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll start, and Jen, add in something as, you know, that you'd like to add in. But we just met with our FACS teachers this week, and we had lots of conversations about what could this look like. Our FACS classes are going to be done in person, and some of the work may be done remotely, but in a FACS class, obviously the focus is on hands-on. So our teachers are really going to have to be thoughtful about what activities they're going to want students to engage in while they have them in class and in person. So obviously they still want to, you know, look at that cooking and that sewing aspect of the class, the nutrition, the health and wellness, some of the electives that we have for our FACS, like our child psych, really depends on numbers, on whether or not those classes are going to run. The same thing for our technology teachers. I'm going to be bringing them in the next couple of weeks to talk about what are some of the challenges that they anticipate in having, you know, the schedule that they're going to be faced with and what that's going to look like. So certainly we're going to be working with the teachers to try to determine what are the best things for students to be engaged in while we have them in person, because those classes, those hands-on classes, are so critical for our students in learning and developing some of those career-ready skills that they're looking to develop.
Jen, did you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add is that we are still trying to offer some of those classes to the 100% virtual learners as well. So if a student is going to learn from home for the next 10 weeks and they signed up for an art class, we are hoping that we'll be able to send supplies home for them so they can complete projects at home. And the same would be for the other classes as well. We don't have it 100% ironed out yet, but that is the plan.
Okay. This is for Tony and Renee. I'm seeing some questions related to, you know, the oversight of staff, you know, because there was a wide range of experiences that students had last spring, specifically when it comes to some of that remote work and or learning. So are there going to be clear guidelines or expectations communicated with staff? What are some of the resources that the district has now available that staff will be able to utilize to make the experience much more authentic compared to what some families experienced last spring?
Yeah, so, you know, I think last time teachers were outstanding. You know, they found out on a Monday they weren't coming back and had to pull it together. So, you know, truly hats off to them and to the students and families who went through it. But we've had a little more time. We've met with the department, like Renee was saying, looking for specific software that they've asked for that could help with music and how to teach that virtually, or if you're using a video, how to make it more interactive and through the videos versus just showing it. So some of the things we've done. They've also been able to participate in some courses on online teaching and how to engage students. And then at the last board meeting, I believe, the adjusted school calendar came out. So now staff will be getting having the opportunity September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 8th, before students come, to have 4 days to work on various things, including learning some of the new technologies they weren't able to participate in this summer.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, for that. Real quick, though, let's shift gears back to athletics. I saw a question regarding the start dates. Again, what's listed right now, Chris, is September 21st.
Correct.
Can you talk more about what the New York State Public High School Athletic Association put out as a possible adjustment for the 3 sports to occur in the spring or in the winter spring season from January on, in the event that fall athletics happens to be postponed? I'm seeing some concerns from those on the call that there might be some overlap in sports. So what might that look like in order to ensure that students get their experiences?
Correct. I don't have the exact dates. I can get those out, and I can get them, out for people to see. It was on a survey, but there was some overlapping in terms of, for instance, the lacrosse. I think it was the soccer season was going to start, like March. And again, this is just, I'm just.
It's all hypothetical.
As an example. So March, to middle of April, and then the spring season, the abbreviated spring season would start, in the middle of April and go to, middle of June. And there was some cross situations that did come up and that were voiced. And those are going to have to be looked at in terms of what we can do. Obviously, we don't want to prevent a student athlete who played a soccer player to prevent them from playing lacrosse as well because of that. So those are all things that are going to have to be looked at. As I mentioned earlier, I appreciate, the state putting this task force together and coming up with these scenarios in the event that it happens. But those are going to be decisions that, whether it's at the state level, our section, a district level, to see what, we would be able to do in that case.
Okay. So again, it looks whether there's an overlap. I mean, the state's well aware, that task force is well aware, and it's my understanding from my involvement in Section 3 athletics that really is just it's out there. They're getting feedback. That certainly is not finalized, and they recognize that if there are athletics next school year or this coming school year, that they're going to do what they can to make sure that seasons are designed so that students do not miss out on experiences based on the lengths and or when those seasons occur. So thank you for those in the audience that are submitting those questions. So we have about 2 minutes left on this call, and I will take one more question here. So assuming that we're following the hybrid model, again, the schedules for more than 6 courses, some courses will be online only. If a course is offered for those who are only remotely learning, let's just say music theory, can a hybrid student take that course as well if they can fit it into their 6-period schedule due to taking other required courses? So I would look to Jen for that answer.
I'm just rereading the question real quick. So there'll be 6 in-person courses at the high school. And so if there is an online, so if music theory, well, let's just do wind ensemble instead. So wind ensemble will be offered virtually. So that could be a 7th course, I think is what that person is asking. So there could be a 7th course, and they could take an art course as well, or not an art course, they could take a chorus course as well. And that would be an 8th course, and they could take that virtually as well.
Okay. Yep. I think, again, the key is students can certainly take more than 6 units of credit. Some will be on the virtual days. And certainly if the district has the ability, or the high school administration have the ability to create courses or have courses offered virtually or remotely, that we're going to do that, because if we have the staff to do that, we want to give flexibility so that everyone has an option to get the courses that they need during these unusual times. I know we're running out of time, so I do want to start to wrap up here and end with just a huge thank you for all of the folks that have registered for these webinars. If this is your first one, we're glad you joined us. If this is your sixth one, we certainly thank you for the commitment in being a part of this. This has been a great experience for us to gather information and feedback, and we greatly appreciate your support. Also, thank you to our panelists this evening. You've done an awesome job of providing as much detail as we have at this point in time, so thank you for that. I am going to paste right now in the chat function a link to a survey. So we certainly would like you to click on this link before we close off on this call, and take time to respond and provide us feedback on this webinar, specifically on athletics and performing arts. And again, as guidance changes and as we hear more information from the governor tomorrow, we will certainly communicate with you and share out what we know. So on behalf of the district, thank you. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.